remember to buy a copy of your favorite books from the cheeky merchants. If we don't have it, we'll source it for you, but we'll definitely find the book for you.
Thanks. Hello, Cheeky Nathan.
Hey, doctors.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I'm excited for today's conversation. I can't wait to hear this person's distinctive laugh when we ask her a few questions burning in my mind.
I'm really excited. I was thinking about how I'm feeling good that I'm here because on a previous episode, I wasn't able to join you. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to fangirl with you.
Facts on facts. Let me introduce today's guest, Zukiswa Wanner. Welcome to the Cheeky Nate. I'm excited about being here and chatting again. I'm really shy to fly. I hope you're ready. And of course, absolutely fantastic that this time I get to be with you again, Nolo. How are you, Advovo?
Doing well. Miss Vanner, how are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Normally, we introduce our guests and see how amazing they are.
How about people who don't read? Zukiswa Wanner is an African writing icon. Her oeuvre includes 5 novels, 4 children's books, a travel book, a satirical nonfiction work, and essays and stories in various publications. She has many accolades, including being selected among 2020's New African 100 Most Influential Africans and Bristol Paper's Literary Person of the Year. Wanner's work had been translated into Portuguese, French, Spanish, and Kiswahili, and she has given several keynote addresses. She's the author of today's book, Love, Married, Kill, a novel. Welcome, Zuki. Hello. It's good to be here. Exactly, but please. No, I think that's simple before we even start.
I'm interested in the title of the book, Love, Marry, Kill. And I wanted to know, apart from what happens in the story, what inspired you to go with this title?
Love, Marry, Kill lightly, and then it was serious. And then it gets light later on. I wanted a title that was playful and would bring people back to the less serious Zukiswa Wanner, the Zukiswa Wanner of the madams and men of the South, not so much London, Cape Town, Joburg. So that's what I wanted to do. I think it's interesting you said that because earlier this year, I moderated a panel that spoke about women-centered fiction, right? Which can sometimes derogatorily be called chiglets, right? Almost like it's this nonchalant, light fiction. But I think there's something powerful about women writing centering themselves in fiction. And so I wanted to speak a little bit about the decision to write what really is a woman-centered book, woman-centered fiction, but also the challenges in delving into this particular genre. Because like you said, there's some subject matter, for example, that you did in some of your previous books that's a lot heavier, a lot more difficult, a little bit more triggering. And this feels like a divergence. Yeah, absolutely. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I have said often that I refuse for anybody to ghettoize me as chiclet, if you will, because majority of book buyers are women and majority of readers are women. I refuse to worry about it. My idea is to write what I'd like to read. Sometimes I'm serious and sometimes I'm light. And this was me hankering back to the light Zukiswa Wanner. I think it's interesting you said this is a return to a different parts of you or part of you some may be familiar with. And thinking about the characters in this book. Even in your previous book, you write characters who move against our moral compasses, right? So the characters in this book engage in an act of infidelity. We don't want to give away too much, but they engage in infidelity. And there's really some strong feelings around that, but also some empathy toward them. I want to speak about characters who move against the moral compass, not only of readers, but society in general.
Whenever I write, I start from a problematic premise. And in this case, my problematic premise was infidelity. And then I wanted to say, how do I make two people who had committed what everybody assumes is an egregious sin, and how do I make them almost likable? And how do we work with them? So I started from a very different place, and then I had to maneuver and work with it. And and eventually we got to where we were. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on your favorite characters, issues, and everything in between.
We're going to fight today.
Completely on flight. What's really interesting also about this book is like this incorporation of current affairs, right? So the novel could kind of technically be set during any time, but it feels very contemporary. And I wanted to know why it was important for you to place it in a contemporary settings, although let's call it infidelity could have happened at any time. There seems to be a contemporary incorporation into the telling of the story. Why was that important to you to constantly keep us abreast of the current affairs in the story?
I think way of working generally with characters has been to see how to. I've been doing I'm working on I plugged a historical novel so that I could do this particular book. So when I was doing the contemporary of it, I wanted to lay it between 1994 and just before COVID. And I wanted to see, because then I didn't have to do as much research as I'm doing on the historical novel, which is like 30,000 words in and packed. Because a lot of the things are things that I remember that existed when I was around and so forth and so on. So it wasn't as much work, but I also wanted to critique. I wanted a journey of the characters moving from when stuff happened until South Africa had hope. The journey of, I think Owami is the journey of South Africa, particularly Black women, the level of hope and elation after 1994. Then it starts waning. Then roads must fall and fears must fall happen. And you're like, yeah, no, there's no rainbowism there type of thing. So I wanted to mirror that. And it also mirrors her relationship.
Are there parts of you in the book?
In this mother radio.
But the wireless.
There is journeying from growing up in Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa coming, the voting, especially when we think about your nonfiction, writing about moving around and where you've grown up and all of that. I wanted to know the kind of underlaying of this, the geographical underpinnings of this book. Is there any semblance to Zuki?
There is certain, like the early me, I actually borrowed generously from myself. That's just the upbringing. My father was not an ambassador. My mother was not like a Mrs. Ambassador. I didn't have the type of colorful life that Owami had. There are certain things that you can pick up that are similar. But for instance, in high school, I was in boarding school. I wasn't in a day school. I didn't stay near walking distance to my high school. I did stay within walking distance of my primary school. But there are quite a lot of differences. I have never worked in advertising. I did not study at BITS for good. So there are quite a lot of differences. But there were certain important things I felt were important to take from my life that I thought were interesting. There is the problematic uncle who was in the movement, for instance. That's a real story.
We're taking a short break. We're taking a short break.
I'm actually curious, now that we're speaking about parts of yourself in the book, What I find interesting is the way you humanize people typically martyred or vilified. I think about mothers who are patriarchy princesses, cheating partners, fathers who are favored. Every single one of these people ends up revealing a side to himself that we either end up empathizing with or disliking, going against the old African adage that has mothers being posted as these beacons that cannot ever be criticized. And cheating fathers, I even end up feeling sorry for the nameless husband in this book. And even favored fathers, the ways people see their fathers as beacons, even when their fathers are problematic. So I want to talk about writing that twist, to look at people who would be disliked and people who would be loved, and then just humanizing them in ways that makes even you as a reader uncomfortable.
Yeah, one of the things I've always said is I never say, and your mother, Dr. Slade, even Lishonolo is somebody with nieces and nephews. You know, one of the things I always say is I never say I'm never going to commit murder. I never say I'm never going to do that. I don't know what might push me to do it. God forbid, if something did somebody to my son, I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would be pushed to do. Even with a serial killer, you hear that neighbor say, he used to help little old ladies cross the street. And so I like to highlight the redeemability of people who may seem like bad characters and show the flaws of people who seem like they're good, because that's what should be.
I like that we don't know what will push us or make us do things. But the humanity question stands alongside the dehumanizing question. I wondered about the nameless husband and whether
Ah.
it was an agency of the wife or dehumanizing him. Why was he nameless? Every other character has a name besides the husband. I wanted to know why you made that decision.
I think it comes out quite early in the book. It comes out when Owami is cheated on, when drama happens to her. She says something that marks how this is gonna go. She says, until today, page 76 of the book, until today, the last paragraph, I asked myself whether things would have been different, whether he would have a name to me beyond the roles he's had in my life. As first boyfriend who became husband, as partner, as estranged husband. What have been the fate of our relationship if I had not scrolled up to see that chart? This is her agency. But she has highlighted, because you remember when she does go back, she says she's going because there are all these other conditionalities that are leading her to go back. She doesn't want this to happen. She doesn't want this to happen to her children. She doesn't trust that this can happen. But she says something in her has died with him. It's about me now. We'll discuss the children, but okay.
We'll discuss the children, but because often one of the big reasons people staying in unhappy relationships is for the kids. I'm doing it for the kids. I want to speak about romantic relationships. There's a reckoning with their halting, their ending, with them not continuing. I wanted to speak about why that's such a central theme in the book. 'Cause when we think about romantic relationships, we have an obsession with longevity and we have an obsession with forever, right? As if that's what gives credence to the substance of a relationship, is how long it's been and whether it lasts forever. And I want to speak about the reckoning of that ending and that halting as a central theme in a book like this.
I think that ending is a lot like a lot of my endings. Only one of my books has had a neatly tied ending. So it's very much two tied. What's different here, somebody would ask, is remember when Owami is doing the church thing, and one of the women says, by the way, what if after Sleeping Beauty, and Prince Charming kissed each other. Later on, he said to her, "We are over 100 years old. Why am I still staying with you?" What if that's what happened? That's part of my anti-fairy tale ending, because I've always wondered about that. When Cinderella went to the palace, the prince found her at his stepmother's and she was sweeping the floor and whatever. Is it possible that she went to the palace and she was just, they got her sweeping the floor as well? They were like, no, you now just innovated, you're working in the palace, but you're still sweeping the floor.
It interests me, talking about romantic relationships and the reckoning with the endings. I find that you write love quite beautifully, and I have a gripe with you about one relationship, which I think about Akane's mother, her leaving.
Love Brendani?
Yeah,
Gonna fight. This is why.
So why, Zuki? Why did she have to go back?
Go back to that rubbish, man.
Think about it in the context of the time. It's 1992. Can a woman really say, "I'm divorcing, leaving my children"? I don't think she didn't have an income. And maybe she was also like the same worries that Owami had are probably the same worries if some woman mistreats my children. So there's that's hanging with her. I love Rendani though. I love the idea of her telling Akani the story.
She's already made the difficult decision. If anyone was going to do it, it was her. Like,
why couldn't she just stay? Screw the children.
what? But Michael Jordan. What? Screw the children, really at Volvo.
Yeah. Do you know what I think about? And I think about that encounter. It reminded me of when my mom passed away. One of the things that I was sad about was that I never got to know her. She was always known to me, to my mother, to her having given birth to me. Mom having that conversation was her saying, "I am more than just your mother."
I'm more than just your father's wife and your mother.
I appreciated that, Zuki. I appreciated the fact that we were able to see this Black woman who had to make tough decisions about whether she stays or goes back and about her children, but also having to say that I considered it and that she lived that part of her life for however long she had some happiness. She tells the story. She was like, it was amazing. It was glorious.
I know, right? Doesn't it take a very different take when when the dad is talking and he says to Akani, "Me and your mother have been together for whatever," and the mom does the sneer, but you never quite know what the sneer is until she tells that story.
I can't stand that, man. My other thing is, I've been listening to a few podcasts on just relationships, etc. And there's one that stuck out. So there's a podcast that Esther Perel did with Andrew Huberman. And so they're talking, Esther Perel did this podcast on relationships and the like. And infidelity comes up often, right? And some of the conversations around infidelity is the idea that it's not always that you're unhappy with the person that you're with. Sometimes people cheat because of who they want to become, right? So I have to be a particular type of person in my marriage, and to become a different kind of person, I need to step out of my marriage. I think a lot about how you've written the cheating in this book in gray areas. There's cheating that's very clear. When Owami's nameless husband, he who shall not be named, cheats on her, it's very clear we hate him, we want to burn him, he must fall. Owami's cheating is a little bit more complicated, right? Because it's in that gray area of an exploration into who she wants to become outside of the title of mother, wife, attached to he who must not be named, put in these boxes of who and what a woman should be. I want to talk about the cheating that the women do in this book is very different to the ways in which the men cheat, give or take.
Alicia, is it not possible that it's because you had a background of who Owami was, so you've grown to empathize with her? She's almost become a friend too as you're reading this. And so for that reason, you can then be like, oh, okay, maybe it's different. If, for instance, Owami had been grown up the same way as Rudo, won't you then be like, this Rudo, ratchet?
I must be honest. Because ordinarily in my daily life, I'm very clear on cheating. I think it's bad. There is no way in which anyone could ever justify it to me. And in the book, I felt conflicted. That's why I even felt sorry for it because I was like, hey, shame. But also, you opened the portal to this. So had you not opened the door to this kind of interaction, maybe it wouldn't have happened. So I think it's less about the fact that that I've gotten to know Owami as a person and more about the positioning of Owami. I think of Owami and a lot of women who endure, right? Endure the unhappiness, endure the gray areas of like people, your male partner getting to explore things and find themselves and be different versions of themselves at different times in ways women are not.
Okay, what happened? How did you feel about Akani?
I think that they were incompatible. I didn't think that Akani needed to leave his marriage in the way that he did. And he was trashy because this was not his first foray into just being fucky, right? Because there's the child who passes away tragically that he lies about. I'm a less sympathetic because Ryan, this is his thing. He's a little bit unhappy. He steadfast. He does problematic things. So I'm a little less sympathetic towards him because he's not a first-time offender. Yeah, but although the circumstances are different with the first woman, right? And I think it is important to say that the circumstances are different. They were on a break. He was doing his thing. She was doing her thing. Fine. But does a break equal a break baby?
Listen, your mom has just said to you, what happened outside, stay outside. What happened in the mountain, stays in the mountain. How do you broach that subject when you're like, maybe everything is about to... Is it possible he was looking for the right time? Like where he's like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to start this. Everything has been looking so well since I came back. How do I begin?
This is how I know that Akani is capable of serious things. Because if you can hide a whole human being, who is Rudo?
Zukif, I do think as a reader, I felt like an accomplice, right?
Mm.
When Owami and Akani, I felt like I encouraged it in some ways. I watched it happen. And
that Cape Town scene really got you.
Because what's going to happen? And then Cape Town, I was like, oh, yeah. Then I was like, what does it say about me?
Just know I'm side-eyeing you.
You have to side-eye me, right? You have to side-eye me. Because I feel cheating is wrong. I don't condone what Owami and Akani did. But I did feel like I was an accomplice because I didn't put the book down. I was like, what happens next? And I felt like, am I encouraging them? This is why I agree with you, Alma. And he has this great love, meets Tumelo, has babies with Tumelo, calls his daughter his first love's name.
After.
You know?
Yo, I'm at what that. Yo.
And why?
In fairness, the name was Zulu and he named her.
He knew it was, I always want to remember this woman, so let me name my child this woman, right? And how, in truth, Tumelo, it's like,
looks like her.
I couldn't get her, so I'm going to get someone who looks like her. So Tumelo, and from the very beginning, she was doomed. She was doomed from the beginning.
True.
Doomed from the beginning.
Maybe that's just his type, right? Maybe he's just attracted to women who look a particular way. And we know that the associations form very early on in our lives. So I don't know. I don't know about that.
Zuki, you're the one who wrote. Tell us.
Why? Because we want to know, type or is Tumelo doomed?
You're bringing whatever you've grown up with to the story. When I mentioned she reminded him of somebody, it was to say that he's got a type, but there is also, and with that, there is a level of being doomed because I feel like if he hadn't gone away, those two would have met and something would have happened. I really do. If there were no underlying reason, I still think those two would have got together.
I agree with you, Zuki. And that's why I'm saying Tumela was doomed from the very beginning. Because to be honest with a meeting is not, at least on Akani's part, it just feels like it happens for Akani, right? The nameless husband, all the drama she went through brings her to that moment. But even if they were both in happy marriages, it fundamentally changed them. There was too much in that meeting for me, at least. And I suppose it's testament to your writing. And that's why I'm saying I was an accomplice. Because even in that first encounter, I was like, oh, Mudim, what's going to happen?
I don't know, friends. I don't know if we can just say in those situations, oh, it was kismet, it was a meeting of the stars. Because you meet people that you find interesting, that you in whatever all the time. At which point does it become you stepping into a particular gray zone or just being a little bit shady, right? I don't know that we can just like, oh, it was a meeting of the soul. I'm undecided. That's just testament to your rising. I don't know if I want Owami and Akani.
I want to be an accomplice.
Women's navigation of sex and their bodies. Something that stands out in the chemistry is the way that Owami and Akani just navigate each other's bodies, each other's desires, and the like. Owami is a bit older by the time she meets Akani. She's had her experience of being the good wife and having sex at a particular time. There is a shift in the way that they are intimate, right? And it's not just sex per se, but in the physicality and intimacy. And so I want to talk a little bit about the ways in which women navigate their bodies, but also navigate sex and how being at different points in your life changes that.
Yeah. I think it's a different power relations. They're no longer going to Aboma Mazala and bringing groceries every week like they did in their 20s because they wanted to be loved. Now they're like, I was working this week, I just want to sleep. It's also when women come into their own sexuality where, yeah, no, you know what? I'm not happy. I want this. And then it's probably where you start hearing husbands saying, never heard any complaints, partners or new boyfriends. I wanted to play with that. Somebody was telling me it gets more with each decade. I'm in my 40s and have conversations with my girls talking about how we're comfortable in our sexuality, how we don't worry about, or do I have cellulite or whatever, and how it's, or you know what? Actually, I'm not happy. Can you do like this? Can you move to the side? The problem is that people generally don't talk about women's sexuality because for some reason, there is the assumption that when a woman is perimenopausal or when she's reached menopause, she stops enjoying sex, which is not true.
I'm too young for the conversation.
You're a mother to 2 children now.
That's 2 children, yeah.
The intimacy and sex thing is interesting, right? One thing that made me feel bad for 2 men, right, was it felt funny with Owami was gentler in some ways, right? Romantic, more in tune. And it feels that Tumela was robbed.
That, hey?
Yeah. When people say, I don't celebrate Valentine's Day or care about these things, and then they cheat and do these things.
They don't celebrate Valentine's Day.
But for me, I think that was it, right, Zuki? There was a lot of social commentary we were making. Oftentimes, you're in relationships with people who are actually
not in a relationship.
I felt sorry for Tumela. She was in this marriage and she thought, my man is about me. My man is not baking cheesecakes.
Hey, it's a cheesecake. I'm out of order for that. Come on. I'm kind for like from cheesecake.
No, that was like the national gift that kept on giving, you know? That one, I'm sorry. It would have been foolish of me as an artist to ignore that gift.
No, you're right. You're right. And, instantly when you read that moment, so you're like, and kind of have to need in that thing. Like,
But this is how there are people who go on to be the best version of themselves, except their family.
Mm.
And almost like this Jekyll and Hyde thing, right? Where to your family, you are just horrible, you're disengaged, you're not interested. To the outside world, you're baking cheesecakes.
Everybody's like Mr. Cheesecake.
Right. Jesus. But it also makes me think, do you know what I mean? This is a woman who has bought into everything patriarchy tells her she needs to do. She is the wife. She gives the man the space to be the man. He must do the manly thing. But also, she's had the children. She's stayed in the marriage. Even in her own unhappiness, I don't think Milo was always happy. That's why the separation happened. Here's this woman who, at every step, is just being beaten down by patriarchy of her own doing sometimes. Because there were times when it was very clear that this relationship was over, but she persisted, maybe for the kids, maybe for her own ideas, maybe for the social capital that being married gives you.
Being a married woman, and he took it's humiliating. She was like, oh my God, this man, he wants me in spite of, because in her mind, she's so full of these patriarchal notions about what's a married woman. He marries her, so he's not going anywhere. I'm not letting him go. And yeah.
So at time with that is what our family tell you. I'm curious about the families in this book. We have a contrast for Akani and Owami. We have contrast in their fathers. On paper, Owami's father has just been amazing. We know that her mother's experience of him is not that. And his father is textbook terrible. We'll find out interesting things about Akani's mother. I want to speak about families and the ways they shape decision making. A lot of things happen in this book because people want to hide shame of their families. They don't want to embarrass their family. They want to hold on to their idea of what family is, but also want to rebel against their families. It's a very interesting network of feelings around family.
Absolutely. Sometimes I feel I should have been Akani's mother's daughter. Melo should have been perfect for his mom. We never know what really goes on in people's household. We see them at parties, weddings, and funerals, but that's a very short space of time. We don't know what's happening in the 20 years they've been together, the 30 years they've been together. With Akani's mom, of course, she has this one thing that she doesn't tell anybody, and her aunt goes to the grave with that secret. And her aunt's husband. She says, interesting, if you decide to go back, make sure whatever you did outside stays there. There's no reason to cause pain. This is her justification of why she's kept quiet about her stuff.
I think you're right. If you go back. So I'm sitting at the edge of my seat to be like, what is going to happen next? We think about Owami. I was like, wow, people can have a bar in their bedrooms. That's brilliant. But I was thinking about the hardship Owami went through when her husband cheated and the mental breakdown. Because in many ways, it was like reckoning with an identity, right? I've always been this woman who's betrothed to this man, amazing power couple, right? And then it realizes, oh, my darling, the glass house is really cracking. Now, who are you outside of this marriage, outside of this job? So for me, in a way, I felt like it was Owami's moment to become who she was. It was unfortunate, but she really did shape up to be the go-getter she's always been. I want to speak a little bit about like mental health and therapy particularly. We see the resistance of not wanting to go to therapy. For me, it's a contemporary thing. Every time you tell someone you go to therapy, they'll be like, it's interesting because I feel like in many ways, Owami ends up going to therapy in order to begin to process some of the things she hasn't processed. So it isn't even about like over the cheating. It's more about, okay, my life is messed up. I have a difficult relationship with my mom. So let me face myself, right? The therapy was her facing herself to become a better person for herself before she became a better person.
And for her children as well. And for everyone in a relationship with her. Yeah, absolutely. And even when she does the recall, when she realizes her father has clay feet, this golden man is not, then she remembers it and is, oh shit, maybe I've been too harsh on my mom. Maybe her conditioning has also led her to be this person.
Medua. It was sad because I feel like in some ways Medua's relationship mirrored that of her mother's towards her grandmother. And it's like this cycle of unhealed trauma and difficult to relationships. I was hoping we could speak about that because I found that to be the saddest parts in the book.
Somebody I know who I'm quite close to, and I remember as a very beautiful relationship, also a middle child like Modiwa, this kid said once to the mom, why did you marry this guy? What are you doing with this guy? I felt like when I was writing Modiwa that I was hearkening to that little conversation of this young boy who asked his mother that, I'm glad my siblings are here, but what are you doing with this guy? What did you ever see in him? He sees his mother as a fantastic woman, nurturing but independent. She's got her life, she's got her friends and this and that. And then there is this guy. So I think it's also that thing with mothers and their sons. Certain children gravitate towards a certain parent. And I reckon Modiwa is the one child who probably would have forgiven his mother if she had said, okay, he didn't get to know everything that happened, but what he did get to know, he was more forgiving than his sister, his older sister, and his younger sister.
I agree with
It speaks to the protection that women's silence often give men, right? You don't reveal that this person is actually so crappy, and the only reason why they'd ever remembered the children's birthday is because you constantly are the one reminding them, or you're constantly the one being in, or you had their bad behaviors. These children knew that their father had tried to order a hit on their mother. Would they still think of him in this golden way? They still think of their mother as this terrible person because her son for him.
Yeah, hey. No, yeah. And a lot of women are like, okay, I don't want to destroy my children's relationships with their father. A lot of mothers do that. There are also fathers who do that to find out who this person is on their own when they grow up. But I don't want to be the one who tarnishes their image of this person. But before we finish, can we talk about my favorite character? Your thoughts on Sandla?
Personally, I love that.
I didn't say Sandla. Oh my gosh.
No, I thought you could be our hitman.
That's what I really loved, right? The idea of crime being ethical, right? Because this person, if it was any other person, I may have done it, but I know these people. I can't do this to these people. So for me, that was fascinating. Some morality to be like, okay. Also, it's in the face of, is there enough money for him to have done that? That's the question I've right? Is there an amount that may have made him consider his ethical nature?
Yeah, they were paying him pretty good given how much hitmen actually charge in this country. And are willing to take a life.
You know what was interesting for me, Zuki? It's like when we think about hitman, right, and hitmen killing spouses, we think of them in insurance context. But here it's not about this husband saying, I want them both out. How evil must you be to let the mother of your children die?
You're still going to be there, so. You're still going to be there. Yeah.
For me, that was hard. But I also want to talk about Akane's cousin, because I feel like this cousin is a real one. It's like, what, guys? Now I don't want to be seen as condoning this, so now I'm out. Let it be known that now I want nothing to do with that. For me, it was important because oftentimes we think about the bro code as a license to do bad. But Ndu shows us that you could have really good relationships with people but still hold them accountable and still say to them, what you're doing is wrong and I want no part of it. There wasn't anything you could have done to stop Akani from doing what Akani wanted to do because he's an adult. You know, have to do for the fact that he was like, nah, I want to stay faithful to my marriage. I don't want I don't want no drama.
But also, I think it was such a beautiful way to think about their bond outside of romance. They had such a close friendship, and I think it's beautiful to see Black men who are in their full whatever, but still have such a closeness and intimacy in how they relate to each other, being able to hold each other accountable. What was striking was the genuineness of their friendship, because they were friends outside of being cousins. They were really good friends.
I really enjoyed that particular thing because people always say, oh, guys don't really relate. And I know I've got a lot of male cousins. And I know my cousins were really close. They'd be like, listen, I'd go to war for you, but I also hold you accountable if you're being crap. One of the things that was true in the book, that little crying episode, that actually happened to me and one of my childhood friends. I went to see her and she was crying. She was staying with her grandmother and she was crying. I said, why are you crying? I was young. And she said, I just sat here and I started singing because I was thinking of my mom and I started crying. So I sat beside her and I started crying with her.
That's beautiful. But for me, I keep the beauty of being able to hold space with somebody. Like you just, I don't know what, but oh, so we're crying. Okay, let's cry. I felt like in many ways saved each other. There are really sometimes those people you're like, yeah, dog, you saved my life. Things could have ended badly, but they didn't.
I'm from the visa.
If we were going to kill anyone, Nezuki, because it's a kill. Nah, Akane's father, it was fine if we were to let him go.
Honestly,
Like that's
Alicia, who would you kill?
Akani's father in place of his sister. Out of blood, because they had a beautiful sibling relationship. I want to see what would have grown into an adult. Would she have been a problematic Rakadi? Would she have been a Rakadi who calls her brother to order? I would have loved to see what that looks like.
Zuki, who would you kill?
I'd probably kill Tumelo to see whether how Akani is gonna act. Will we start romanticizing her and saying, oh, my wife was such a good woman, or what?
Marry. Who would you marry?
Who would I marry? Raindani. Just because he was such a good person. He found Akani's mother in such a broken, painful state. So the fact that he was able to love her in that state, but also be realistic about what the future held for them and not hold on to the thing that he shouldn't hold on to. I respected that.
I'd marry Owami and have fun.
Like, he's got my heart.
And Owami and I would have a ball. I'd marry Owami.
And Alma, who would you? I would marry Rani. Yo, that man, shame.
I would love Owami's teenage daughter because I think when she begins to realize the realization is going to just be rough, I can see myself idolizing certain people in my life and not extending the grace needed. I would love the change more because how we come to the reality of people in our lives can be heartbreaking. That is when you need the most love.
Zuki, who would you love?
I would definitely love Ndu. He is steadfast, solid, like homie lover friend. He's that guy. He'd be the guy always in my corner.
I'd also love him too. I think he's a real one.
If you were to do a sequel, who would be your main character?
Jumelo, I'm curious about this woman's going. Is she gonna get a revenge body for doing Pilates? What's next? What does it mean to reinvent yourself outside of this idea of who you've been in relation to other people? So when you don't get to play the role of wife and mother, who is she going to be? She's going to shape her head and just dye it blonde. I'm so curious about what the next step would be. What
So
happens
she's going to have a podcast.
Like, is she going to date the total opposite of the man that she was married to? What does it look like for her to enter a relationship for the first time, as people say, "Kuning, man, kuning"?
I would want Arendani and Andani's mom to be the main characters. They would meet and resume from where they took off, but it would be more enriching. Yeah, that's me.
So we'd kill Akani's dad first, right?
Yes, no.
He must just live with the consequences of having been a crappy person. He must watch this woman flourish.
Where she flourishes at the age of 65.
I would plan her. As you can see, we really enjoyed and loved Love, Marry, Kill.
Thank you so much for reading with such generosity.
Look at the tree. We have Zuki. What do you hope Love, Marry, Kill does in the world now that it's out?
I'd hope for something like it. Really, I think we've been having a really hard time as people in the world in the last few years. We had lockdown. We are witnessing a genocide. There are a lot of crazy stuff. Really just want it to be that type of where people can, for the time that they're reading it, escape from the horrors of everyday life and laugh and see themselves or people they know or something, but just not too depressed about the state of the world.
I love that because I think that's, at least for Alma and I, there was an escape. I felt like an accomplice because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stop now. What's happening next?
Exactly.
And so thank you so much from the Cheekinator, Zuki. We can't wait to book your historical novel, which you've just told us about. We are going to have you back because we'll be talking about his story.
I still try to be funny, but I can't get the humor out. I'm reading books like this as part of my research. And I'm 30,000 words in already. So it's a trip, but I am loving it so far. And I'm taking breaks when it gets too much.
And writing sequel, Love, Marry, Kill.
Listen, if I want to do a sequel for Love, Marry, Kill, it won't be what you two have talked about. I'm curious and wondering about Sandla's story.
Zuki, this
It's
is
a pleasure.
We look forward to your new book and thank you for such an intriguing conversation. I think we walk out with some newfound insights, but also just our own grappling with the humanity, the difficulty in being human, right? And what that looks like in every aspect. So thank you. And we look forward to more of you, more of your writing, more of everything.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for being the cheeky natives that you are.
Until next time, Cheeky Natives, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Cheeky Natives. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and rate the podcast on all your streaming platforms.